love, trust, and the promise of forever. These are the cornerstones of any marriage. But when secrets lurk beneath the surface, even the most perfect day can unravel into tragedy. This is the story of a wedding night that began with celebration but ended in bloodshed, a true crime story of betrayal, hidden desires, and a fatal choice. Our story takes place in a charming, quiet neighborhood where the wedding of Amelia and Ethan was meant to be the crowning jewel of a perfect love story. They were the couple everyone admired, the handsome, devoted groom and his beautiful bride, loved by all who knew them. But as they danced their first dance, laughing and stealing kisses, no one could see the dark secrets threatening to tear them apart. The storm was brewing, and when it struck, it would leave a trail of destruction. Ethan's best man, Adam, stood just a few feet away during the ceremony, smiling as he always had, his role as a supportive friend cemented over years of unwavering loyalty. But beneath the surface, Adam's feelings were far more complicated than anyone knew. There had always been something between him and Ethan, something neither could fully acknowledge but couldn't ignore either. And on this night, everything was about to change forever. As Amelia walked down the aisle, her eyes shining with love, Ethan's heart pounded. He had always loved her, or at least he thought he did. But standing just behind him was a man who had stirred feelings in him that he didn't understand. Adam, his best friend since childhood, had become something more. The moment their hands brushed in the dressing room before the ceremony, Ethan felt it. A connection too powerful to ignore, but far too dangerous to reveal. The sun had just started its slow descent, casting a golden glow over the venue as guests arrived in their finest attire. The atmosphere was one of joy and celebration, a picture-perfect wedding that anyone would envy. Amelia, radiant in her white gown, floated down the aisle toward Ethan, who stood waiting at the altar. He was handsome in his tailored suit, but there was a tension in his smile, a flicker in his eyes that no one noticed except one man. Adam, his best friend from the outside. Ethan and Adam's friendship was the stuff of legends. Two men, inseparable since childhood, supporting each other through life's highs and lows. But beneath that camaraderie was a bond neither dared speak of. A bond built on years of shared moments, lingering glances, and the unspoken knowledge that their connection was far deeper than either of them was willing to admit. For years, Ethan had pushed those feelings aside, convincing himself that his love for Amelia was enough. But today, as he stood at the altar, Adam's presence just a few feet behind him was like a weight pressing down on his chest. Adam, standing tall and composed as Ethan's best man, had been fighting his own battle. For years, he had loved Ethan silently, hiding his feelings behind a mask of friendship. But the closer Ethan got to his wedding day, the harder it became for Adam to contain the storm inside him. Watching the man he loved pledge his life to someone else was unbearable, and yet he couldn't tear himself away. He needed to be there, to witness the moment Ethan became someone else's forever. It was a masochistic choice, one that would lead both of them down a path neither could return from. As Amelia reached the altar, she smiled up at Ethan, her heart full of love and excitement for the future. She had no idea of the turmoil brewing inside her soon-to-be husband, no inkling of the truth hidden in the glances exchanged between Ethan and Adam. All she saw was a man she loved, standing before her, ready to vow eternal loyalty. But even as Ethan recited his vows, his voice steady, his hands began to tremble. His eyes flickered to Adam for just a moment, too quick for anyone else to notice, but not quick enough to escape Amelia's attention. The ceremony continued without a hitch, and by the time they were pronounced husband and wife, the guests erupted in cheers, blissfully unaware of the cracks forming beneath the surface. But for Ethan, each cheer felt like a dagger in his heart, a reminder of the life he was committing to while burying his true feelings. Adam's forced smile at the reception did little to mask the hurt in his eyes. And as the night wore on, the tension between the two men grew palpable, noticed only by those who knew where to look. Unfortunately for Ethan, one of those people was Amelia. The reception was everything Amelia had dreamed of, elegant, filled with laughter, music, and love. She danced with Ethan under the twinkling lights, their guests cheering as they moved gracefully across the dance floor. But even in those moments of joy, she couldn't shake the strange feeling gnawing at her. Ethan, though smiling, seemed distant. His eyes were often unfocused, and when she caught him glancing toward Adam, her heart skipped a beat. "Are you all right?" she whispered during a slow dance, looking into his eyes. Ethan forced a smile. "Just a bit tired from the day," he replied, brushing it off with a soft kiss on her forehead. But even that gesture felt hollow to Amelia. Adam, meanwhile, was doing his best to stay in the background, congratulating the couple when needed, raising his glass in forced toasts, but all the while watching Ethan from afar. His heart ached with every touch, every kiss shared between the newlyweds. He knew he should leave, disappear before his emotions got the better of him. But he couldn't. Not yet. As the evening progressed, Ethan's anxiety became more apparent. His conversations grew shorter, his laughter more forced. Amelia noticed how often his eyes darted toward Adam, and a knot began to form in her stomach. It wasn't just exhaustion. Something else was troubling him. But before she could ask again, Ethan excused himself, heading toward the restroom. It wasn't the restroom Ethan. A week before the wedding, Ethan had been overwhelmed. The pressure of the upcoming ceremony, the expectations of his family, and the weight of a life he wasn't sure he wanted had all come crashing down on him. That night he had called Adam, desperate for a distraction, for someone who understood him. They had shared a bottle of whiskey, laughed about old times, but as the night wore on, something changed. The tension that had always existed between them, the tension they had both ignored for years, finally broke through. A touch lingered too long. A glance turned into something more. Before either of them knew it, they had crossed a line. What had started as a friendship had turned into something far more dangerous, something they both knew couldn't exist in the open. But it did exist, if only for that night. And now, on his wedding night, Ethan couldn't stop thinking about it. His mind replayed every moment in vivid detail. The way Adam's hand had felt against his skin, the way his heart had raced with both excitement and fear. But now, standing alone in the hallway, the weight of that night crushed him. How could he go back to Amelia, to the life they had planned, when his heart was divided? As Ethan wandered the halls, Adam was fighting his own battle. He had noticed Ethan leave the reception, and he knew exactly where he was headed. Unable to bear the distance any longer, Adam followed him, his heart pounding. When he found Ethan standing alone in a dark corner of the hotel, staring out the window, Adam hesitated for a moment before approaching him. "Ethan," Adam called softly, his voice barely above a whisper. Ethan turned, his face etched with guilt. "Adam, I can't keep doing this. I can't pretend anymore." Adam stepped closer, the distance between them closing. "You don't have to. You know how I feel about you. We can't keep living like this." The air between them was thick with unspoken words, emotions too raw to ignore. Ethan's heart raced as Adam reached for his hand, the touch sending a shiver through him. They stood in silence, the weight of their decisions hanging heavily in the air. But they weren't alone. Unbeknownst to either of them, Amelia had followed. The sinking feeling in her gut had driven her to search for her husband, and now, standing just around the corner, she witnessed the one thing she never could have imagined. The man she had married, the man she loved, was in the arms of another, his best friend. Her heart shattered into 1,000 pieces as she watched them, her mind struggling to process what was unfolding before her eyes. The truth, once hidden beneath layers of secrecy, was now clear. And with that clarity came an anger she had never known. Amelia's presence went unnoticed as she slowly backed away, her body trembling with rage and betrayal. The pain was overwhelming, but something darker stirred within her, a need for revenge, for justice. Without thinking, she turned and stormed back to the reception hall, her mind racing. She grabbed the first heavy object she could find, a champagne bottle, and without hesitation made her way back to where Ethan and Adam stood. When she reached them, her vision was blurred by tears, her hands shaking with fury. Without a word, she swung the bottle at Ethan, striking him across the head. The sound of the impact echoed through the empty corridor as Ethan crumpled to the ground, blood pouring from the wound. Adam screamed, rushing to his side, but it was too late. The blow had been fatal. Ethan lay still, his life taken in an instant. Adam, now kneeling beside Ethan's lifeless body, was frozen in shock. Amelia, her hands still gripping the blood-stained bottle, stood over them, her breathing ragged. But the rage hadn't subsided. In her mind, Adam was just as guilty as Ethan. He had stolen the man she loved, and now she would make him pay. With one final scream, she lunged at Adam, swinging the bottle again. He barely had time to react before the bottle smashed against his skull. He fell beside Ethan, the two men lying in a pool of blood, their secret affair now a tragic end. As Amelia stood over the bodies, the reality of what she had done began to sink in. The love of her life gone, her best friend dead. The weight of her actions crushed her, but it was too late. There was no going back. She collapsed to the floor, her sobs echoing through the empty halls. The celebration had turned into a nightmare. The wedding day, once a symbol of hope and new beginnings, was now a scene of violence and death. As the police arrived, Amelia was taken away, her future as shattered as the lives she had destroyed. The media would later label it the Wedding Night Massacre, a tale of love, betrayal, and murder that would shock the world. This story serves as a haunting reminder of the destructive power of secrets and lies. What was once a story of love and friendship turned into a nightmare of betrayal and death. Let this be a lesson that the truth, no matter how painful, must come to light before it destroys everything. If you were captivated by this tragic tale, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to this channel for more gripping stories of love, loss, and the dark truths that often hide in the shadows.